the call to order here. And then we'll start with the roll call. So Tammy, would you start us off with the roll call?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're first on the roll call. Nate Reisner, Coconino County.
Here.
Okay. Paul Mood, City Flagstaff Engineer.
Here.
And Michelle McNulty, City of Flagstaff.
Here.
Thank you. Jeff Bowman, City of Flagstaff. Not present. Jess McNeely, Coconino County. Not present. Ann Dunno, Mountain Line. Thank you. Ruth Garcia, ADOT.
Yes.
Thank you. Victoria Nill, ADOT. Thank you. Kimberly Utley, Federal Highway Administration.
Here.
Thank you. And I see we do not have any alternates attending. All of the MetroPlan staff are here. We have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you much. Next, we'll go to public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the committee on any subject within their jurisdiction that is not scheduled before the committee on this day. Due to open meeting laws, the committee cannot discuss or act on items presented during this portion of the agenda. To address the committee on an item that's on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for a public comment at the time the item is heard. Individuals are limited to 3 minutes for comment. Members of the public who wish to make a comment are asked to raise their hand and be recognized. They wish to make. All right, Jeremy. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Vice Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Jeremy DeGator. I'm the District Administrator for ADOT's North Central District. Here, I just wanted to officially hand the torch to Victoria Nill, our new ADOT representative on the TAC. We're super excited to have her on board here in the North Central District. She brings a wealth of knowledge with her from her previous experience with Minnesota DOT, where she spent over 25 years there, has a background in transit, multimodal planning, and so on. So we're excited to have her on board, and I think she's going to do a fantastic job for this committee. So I just wanted to introduce her and then hand it off. So thank you all and have a great meeting.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anybody else from the public wish to make a comment at this time? All right, not seeing any, we'll move on to item number 4, recognition and introductions. Kate, you want to take that over?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make 2 quick recognitions. First, I would like to recognize Michelle McNulty. She served as our chair prior to this meeting for the last 2 years. And we did quite a bit in that time. Really appreciate her help moving our meetings to City Hall and then working with us to move them down here. And we advanced a lot of other activities as well. So Michelle, we actually have a small gift of appreciation for you, and we will give it to Paul. So don't let him keep it.
Thanks, Kate. It was a pleasure serving, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. This is sandwiched between a couple meetings, and it was my pleasure, and I look forward to just being a board member now. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. The other recognitions we want to do, as Jeremy just mentioned, we want to welcome Tori Nill to the TAC, as well as Kimberly Utley from FHWA. So appreciate them agreeing to give their service to the MetroPlan region. Right. That's it for recognitions. Thank you.
Looking for the September 24th, 2025 meeting minutes. Anybody willing to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the meeting minutes as presented.
There's a motion by Paul Mood
This is Michelle. I'll second.
and a second by Michelle McNulty. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Right, motion passes. Moving on to section B, consent agenda. There's no consent agenda items at this time, so I'll move on to item C, action items. Consideration of possible action regarding strategic grant plan 2026 to 2029 update. Kate, you want to take that on?
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the TAC. So just a reminder on what MetroPlan Strategic Grant Plan is. It is a document that we've been putting together over the last couple years with all the influx of discretionary grant funding available, mostly through the introduction of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We wanted to have a plan for how we were going to leverage money in the region to achieve priorities. It had a 3-year outlook so that people could plan ahead, because sometimes preparing for a grant application can be complex. You might need a level of engineering done, potentially some benefit cost analysis work complete, et cetera. And once a NOFO comes out or a notice of funding opportunity comes out, you have very limited time to respond. And so this gets us all thinking ahead of time about what we might be pursuing. This update is a pretty major overhaul of what we saw in the strategic grants plan previously, because it's the first time we've updated since there are new federal administration priorities. So the previous strategic grants plan had a heavy emphasis on bike ped, transit, multimodal components. Those were the kinds of projects the administration was looking to move forward. The administration now is really looking to move forward safety projects as well as projects that benefit families. And so we've just taken that lens to the projects identified in the plan and swapped some things around in an effort for us to leverage the most money for the region. We have lots of needs in all sorts of transportation categories. So the other reason we have this plan is that while you have to have a great project and a good grant application, there is also you have to have support from your congressional representatives. And so when multiple projects are coming in congressional representatives, the representatives typically don't want to pick favorites. And so they often just stay out of it. And if we can be strategic and just submit one package for them, they're more likely to support it. The lobbyist that many of our agencies use is Bob Holmes, and he says, when we all apply, none of us receive. So we're trying to avoid us all applying so that someone can receive in the region. And we really put our regional hats on in the development of this plan. So that way we're looking at that big picture and not just thinking of our own individual organizations. The way this plan has a little bit of teeth to it is if your project is identified in the strategic grants plan and you're pursuing it as anticipated, I can just write you a letter of support and hand it over to you, no problem. If you want to deviate from the strategic grants plan, MetroPlan may still support your application. We're just going to go to the board for that. And that's to try to get people to plan ahead and think about what they are pursuing and why we're pursuing certain things or why we're making changes to what we thought we were going to pursue. I want to put a big caveat on what you're going to see in the out years in the current plan, because the IIJA is set to expire in September and Congress is working on a new package, and that may or may not include some of these grant programs. And so, look at years 1 and 2 closely. Years 3 and 4 are a good idea, but really surface transportation reauthorization will likely have occurred before then, and these programs are likely to have changed, and we'll do another major update of the strategic grants plan at that time. So with that, I'm going to jump into all the grant programs that we're proposing. These slides are busy. Hopefully you can kind of see what's happening on them. The tables that you're going to see on the left side are the projects that were previously in the strategic grants plan. The tables on the right are what we're proposing are in there now. And we're showing both so that you can really see the changes that we made. And we did work with partners in the development of this. I'm just going to talk about the projects that are really in the next year or two as we go through these. So Transportation Alternatives is a pass-through program that ADOT administers, so federal funding that we apply to ADOT for. The couple projects that we're really looking to move forward there this year are a couple projects that have already been awarded in the region, making sure that we're keeping those things moving. So one is safety improvements on US 180. Their design money for that has already been awarded, and we're hoping that in the next round of applications, we can move forward with the construction. And then same with the construction of the Mount Eldon Base Trail that the Forest Service was awarded a grant for. So hoping to be able to move that project forward in the next cycle also. Looking another year out, the county has a Cromer Elementary project that they're trying to get in a position to apply for. And then there is some interest from city staff around a downtown mobility study in a potential future year also. In the highway safety improvement program, I'm going to put a big asterisk on these, that there is a detailed analysis that has to occur for the to be awarded a HSIP project. We have not done that at this stage. We're just suggesting things that might qualify through the HSIP project. And again, the strategic grants process would allow us to start thinking about them so that we could evaluate and see if we think they might actually be awarded through that project. So the county is looking at rumble strips on Loop Road and Lake Mary Road. And then we have a suggestion for what we're calling a bundle of East Flagstaff safety improvements that are high visibility crosswalk, new signage, potentially leading pedestrian intervals depending upon the complications associated with that, and retro-reflective tape on signals. And then there's a similar project that we're suggesting might be an opportunity, which is those similar kinds of improvements on Milton. We would need to coordinate with ADOT on that to move it forward. So those are the ideas we have. This program was not previously in the strategic grants plan, so there's no previous chart here. The Safe Streets and Roads for All program, SS4A, has been a great one for us in the region. It really ties specific safety improvements to high crash roadways or hotspot crash locations. So you can see we've made some changes here too. And some of these are a little vague, but again, this gives us the time to start thinking about fleshing some of this out. The city's capital plan has about $6 million in the next 5 years for crossings and traffic calming. So we're suggesting there's the potential to leverage that money so that we can get more done. The county is looking at a safe routes to school and bus stops planning program. Other potential future projects include doing something with our Safe Routes to School Northeast area schools, which is the Cedar and 4th area. There's a bunch of schools there. There's also Complete Streets money in the city's capital plan that just doesn't have a specifically identified project that could be leveraged for that as well. The next one is the Active Transportation Infrastructure Improvement Program. This program actually has really strange rules to it, quite frankly, that make it very hard to apply for. A construction application has to be at least for $15 million, but there's only like $50 million across the country for the whole program. So, it's not set up where we're likely to be very successful in this program. But projects here, this is a specific bike ped program. So these are still bike ped projects here. A project that was previously in many places within the strategic grants plan is the Milton Bikeway. It's kind of a parallel path to Milton. And then a bikeway along the railroad tracks, like through that's parallel to West Route 66, but closer to the railroad tracks. So looking at trying to move the design of that project forward through this program is our best idea for this one. The Protect program is something that has been, yes, go ahead. The Protect program is a program that actually the NOFO had been released and people were making applications, and just before the application deadline, the administration did pull that grant. So the city has a prepared application for the first project that they weren't able to submit already in place. And I assume that if that program does open up again, that the city will want to go ahead and submit that application. Other things in future years, should this program ever open again, resilience planning is a eligible activity that could be of interest to partners, as well as a potential drainage bundle that you see on the list as well. This is a program, I don't know if I'm super optimistic, we will see many more applications in at this point since the NOFO was open and hasn't been reopened for a year. The next one is the BUILD program, formerly RAISE, if you're looking at the old strategic grants plan. This is a very popular program. Up to $25 million can be awarded in an application. Our suggestions here are the construction of John Wesley Powell from Lake Mary Road to I-17. The city has submitted an Arizona Smart Fund application for that, so needs to make a federal application within the next 2 years for that project. And then again, that northeast area, schools, safe routes to school, Cedar Fourth area as a potential project. This program, the FLAP program, only opens every several years. And the county typically is very aggressive about going after this funding and has been for a long time. The first project has been identified as a priority for the county. And then in the future, an idea that we had, but again, this is years out, so we'll see, is the repavement of Snowbolt Road. If you have been out there, that pavement condition is in very poor shape. Mountain line buses run on it, et cetera. So there'd be some multi-jurisdictional benefits to moving that forward. Inframega Rural, this is kind of a bundle of grant programs that are offering the largest dollar value grants across the country. So if you have large projects, these are really the places to be applying. The county is pursuing Belmont Interchange here. They also, I believe, have submitted an Arizona Smart Fund request for Belmont. Is that right, Nate? Okay, got it.
And submitted a $2.5 million rural and tribal grant, and then we just submitted appropriations request for it as well.
Great.
So we're gonna throw everything at it that we can.
The Belmont interchange is expensive enough that the county needs to throw everything at it, so understood. So this one suggested that might, because these programs are so large, this might take several applications to get through, which is why it's up there a couple times. In further out years, a consideration for this program could be Lone Tree realignment and potential interchange. That's also a very high dollar value project and could be phased or broken in multiple ways. For transit, I've put all the transit ones on here on one table just to give you all a sense of the kinds of things that Mountain Line is looking for under a couple transit specific programs that are only available to them. Big projects ahead for Mountain Line really are phase 2 of their Caspar master plan. They're working on their maintenance bays now, and then the future stage would be additional bus storage there. And then a bunch of fixed route and paratransit van replacements. So kind of strategizing around getting money to replace some aging vehicles. The 5305E transit planning program is actually a program that only MetroPlan is eligible for, but we partner very closely with Mountain Line on their transit planning needs for these applications. So we don't have anything identified yet. We actually just received a notice of award from the last round earlier this week. And so we're focused on that at the moment. We'll figure out what projects are next moving forward. The Rural and Tribal Assistance Program is the one that Nate just mentioned related to the Belmont Interchange. So you see that project here. This is a grant program that's just like setting the stage for people to apply for future grant applications. So $250,000 to $2.5 million awards that can go as far as design. So again, if we were to pursue interchanges, are those big projects that we might need to figure out how to strategize around. There's a couple other ones. There's Lone Tree, and that's a typo. It should be Woody Mountain Road as the project in that, and I can fix that typo. So this would just be doing analysis around how we might move those projects forward. The Arizona Smart Fund is local match dollars or design dollars to set people up for federal applications. So this chart was built based on some of the other applications that are suggested in the strategic grants plan. What would we need to be applying for when in order to pursue some of these if people need match? So they kind of tie back to the projects we've already talked about and the timelines for them. This is a new one we haven't had before as well. This is the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council bill. We have big discussions about this separate from the strategic grants plan every year and what we want to put in there. At this point, I'm suggesting we probably need to keep working on the same things we've already been working on through this project. So suggesting we might just continue to advocate for the ones we've already identified rather than moving pieces around. But we will revisit that conversation with the TAC and board before we actually insert any projects into the bill this year. And then the last one also new is congressionally directed spending, just getting people thinking about what we might apply for there. It's ideal to have projects of 3 million or less to get congressionally directed spending identified for something. So you can see again, the Belmont projects recognized there. Design of West Route 66 could be a potential opportunity, and also construction of the DCC Phase 2 if there is a gap on that. That could be a potential project. So with that, again, this is our best guess. The ideas, we're thinking ahead, planning for things. We can make deviations from it, but by having something in place, we can also help remind you and direct our staff time towards helping supporting some of these applications better. So our recommendation is to move forward with adopting this plan to give us that guidance. But I will turn it over to the TAC for questions and comments.
Thanks, Kate. Are there any questions or comments from the members of that?
The general, I mean, it's really well laid out and I really appreciate hearing about all the different projects. I just have a question about, I'm thinking about 4th Street corridor and the Safe Routes to School project that I know MetroPlan's working on treatments for bike and ped infrastructure to help access to schools. And yet there's obviously a big need for just corridor improvements in general. So that 30 million that was showing up in there, I guess my question is, when you look at all these different opportunities, is there a way to say, what's our best chance, like, what are the priorities, like at the city, when you look across, you take away the ones that you're not going to be overlapping with what the county is going for, right? And you look at those key areas within the city that's coordinating with other agencies, particularly MetroPlan and sometimes Mountain Line. But how do you figure out the best strategy to get from, some great plan ideas to getting a design and staying focused so that you're like, hey, this is our best chance of getting this grant for design. Let's at least get that done. And how does that happen at the city? And maybe this is a question for Paul on strategizing, getting focused awards for certain areas, and then saying, okay, once we've done that, that means these other things get shuffled around. And this grant plan only comes out, every year.
Every year, yeah.
But this happens fast, right? And so I guess I'm struggling a little bit with how that plays out.
A lot of it has to do with, I think, the MetroPlan strategic advance, right? We kind of prioritize our projects there. We work closely with MetroPlan to see what programs fit what projects, what will score well. The recent one for the John Wesley Powell Boulevard extension, we were actually going to put money next year in our capital improvement plan to do like a 15% design so we could go after grants. But then, talking with Kate, it's like, hey, Easy Smart Fund has money for design. Why don't you make an application to them? So our application is in right now. But yeah, we would love to do 4th Street. We'd love to do like something on Milton. We just know those are big projects with a lot of complicated, right of way and businesses.
Right.
So we're trying to pick stuff off that we can actually get done.
And if I can just add to that, I will say in our last update or when we made the original strategic grants plan, we did sit down and we went through every project we could find in the region and ranked it 1 through 3 if it was going to score well under administration priorities or not, and if we thought there was match. That's a key. If nobody's got match, we're not moving it forward.
And when Sandra was talking,
Yep.
Trevor, Henry, our capital manager, and myself sat down with her and went through CIP.
Yeah.
And went through like, okay, what projects, what's the scope of each project? What would be a good fit for a grant? Which grant? So yeah, we're really looking at that.
So for 4th Street on there, does that mean for sure the city's applying for some of these, or
No, so some of this is,
the question is like,
yeah.
plan, but then how does that translate to what actually happens at the individual agency level?
So at this stage, what I did is I looked at planning efforts that are in the works, as well as what's in capital plan and what's been identified in 419 funding. And there is, we're trying to move the Safe Routes to School piece forward, which has strong support from the current administration because you can make those ties to supporting families and applications. There are a bunch of schools in that area. The city has a general line in the capital plan for complete streets conversions, which are essentially what these projects would be. And in speaking with the city team, there is not a defined project for what the complete streets conversions are. And so essentially, I'm here making a recommendation of there is design work being done. I have no idea if it's 30 million or not. I took a stab at what I thought some complete streets conversions might cost. We don't even have concepts yet. We're still in the early planning stages. But once we get those concepts, we could revisit, is this still a good path forward for getting some of these things done? If all we end up with are, I'm going to say 2 pedestrian crossings, build may not be the path for us to pursue if that's all we recommend. But at this stage, I want to keep it on our radar so that the planning process doesn't die. And then next year, if we go to update, we can see if that's still a priority or what came out of that planning effort. The other thing we're doing, just as a reminder for the TAC, is the project prioritization process, where we have hired Kittleson and Associates, and they're under contract now. They're working on this. I'm really excited about this project. I think it's going to help this and the P2P process and the TIP and all the things we're doing. And I hope partners find it useful when they're trying to figure out what to do next also. They are currently thumbing through all of the planning documents in the region. There's no one place where you can just see every project that's identified by the city, the county, even between multiple ADOT documents or multiple city documents. You have to look in the ATMP over here or a RSA over here to find the project. So they're combing through all of that and they are mapping it so that we have a GIS platform where people can actually look and see what plans have already said should happen on these roadways. That will be available to all the partners that they could see it. But after they get all the projects mapped, they're going to work with us on a prioritization process. And we're going to try to keep this simple because you could go down rabbit holes for project prioritization and never get it right. So the direction that is given to them is simple. We don't want to do complex analysis on 400 projects. We need this to be something very simple. And we want you to base them off of the adopted transportation values of MetroPlan. So the TAC and the board have all adopted those as important things. They're on that wheel at the front of our PowerPoints all the time. So they're going to come up with some simple evaluation criteria for how we might measure Vision Zero or those other values. And then the idea is we'll have a platform that will auto rank things for us, but then I can bring them to the TAC and say, well, here's what GIS spits out when I ask it for the best safety projects in the region. Here's what the project prioritization tool spits out. Do we think that's right? Do we want to adjust it? So we'll still apply our critical thinking. The idea is not that we just defer to the program, but it'll give us that starting point list. But I also hope that as our partners are developing capital plans, that you could pull it up and say, oh, here's an idea of what might be a priority for us. But also just a useful tool that if a development project comes in, a pavement preservation project comes in, somebody can look at the map and we could incrementally make all these improvements through those smaller projects as well, because people know that they're already planned. It was a very long answer, but maybe that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
And then just a reminder for calls to the public. So, yeah.
Seeing any, then are there any comments from the public? So please raise your hand. All right. Now we'll be looking for a motion to recommend to the executive board to adopt the strategic grants plan 2026 to 2029 company. Is there anybody willing to make a motion?
I move to make a
There's
motion.
a motion by member Dunham, second. A second. And a second by Paul Moon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That motion passes. Carrying on to item number 2, consideration and possible action regarding transportation improvement program, TIP. Formal amendment to include highway safety improvement program, HSIP funding awards for Burris Lane, US 89 and US 89 Country Club to Marketplace. And there you are.
Sorry, I tried to make that title as long as possible for you, so. All right, so today, as you know, we do have a formal amendment request to update 2 projects that were recently awarded the Highway Safety Improvement Program funding, and these 2 projects are currently listed in our TIP. These projects require formal amendment because we're updating the lead agency to ADOT, obviously the funding amounts, and then the grant resource. And just as a FYI, both of these projects are 100% federally funded, so that makes this even better. All right, so our first award goes to the City of Flagstaff in the amount of $2.7 million. This is for safety improvements of lighting and retroreflective signal head tape along US 89 between Country Club Drive to Marketplace. Our second award is for Coconino County, $1.6 million. Oh, thank you. And this is for finally the Burris traffic signal. So these are the 2 items that we are looking to update as a formal amendment within the TIP. So with that, I'll open it up for any discussions. As you see here, we also have our recommendation on board.
I've got a question. Is there any way that we can add the East Belmont traffic interchange so we can finish up the change of access report?
That's a good question. I think we can, right?
We're not able to add it to this item.
Oh, not to this item. Okay.
So, yeah, for just point of order, so ultimately the board, we are just recommending to the board to adopt it. So with the direction from the TAC, you could tell us to add that for the board.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Any questions or any other questions or comments from the Right, am I allowed to make a motion? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the executive board formally amend the transportation improvement program to include the highway safety improvement program, HSIP funds awards, the Burris Lane US 89 intersection, and the US 89 Country Club to Marketplace projects, and also include the East Belmont traffic interchange as a, what should we call it, a future project.
Yes, future.
Illustrative project. So Coconino County to be on finish up the change of access report. Is there a second? Motion by
I'll second this, Ann.
and those seconds, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, going to section D, discussion items. Title 6 Civil Rights Training. Tammy, you're going to give us the Title 6 training?
I am.
All right.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tammy Suhovic. I'm the business manager for MetroPlan, and I'm here today to present some information about our annual civil rights training. This is a requirement as part of our Title VI plan that we prepare every year. So we're going to refamiliarize ourselves with Title VI. Let's begin with an overview of what Title VI is. The Title VI Civil Rights Act 1964 states that no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And so, because MetroPlan receives federal financial assistance, we develop a Title VI plan. We adhere to this Title VI Civil Rights Act. The Title VI Civil Rights Act is a federal law, and its purpose was to prevent subsidizing discrimination in federal funds. That's why it highlights that agencies receiving federal funds must adhere to the act. It also wanted to address issues that were going on at the time where grants were being awarded and people were being prevented from participating under the separate but equal idea. So it eliminated that. It also provided a way for us to litigate or identify issues of discrimination as a group instead of having to identify each instance as it was brought forward. So the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987 expanded this Civil Rights Act not only to include agencies that receive federal funding for specific programs, but we are also held to be responsible for this Civil Rights Act for all of the programs that we have, whether they're federally funded or not. So it expanded and included those protections so that we can't do this for just our federal programs, we do it for all of our. So Title VI ensures that individuals are not denied a service on the basis of race, color, or national origin. It also provides that they would receive a service or benefit that is not different from what others receive. They need to be receiving the same type of benefit. Also, we want to make sure that individuals are not restricted in their enjoyment of any of the advantages or privileges that others are receiving. So the demonstration little picture here demonstrates what is equality versus equity. We're striving for equity. We're striving to make sure that everyone has the same access and opportunity to the programs and benefits from all of the work that MetroPlan does. And so that little picture kind of demonstrates our goal. Some of the key Title VI principles that MetroPlan follows, and forgive me, I'm referring to my notes because this is only the second time I've presented this. But MetroPlan established our basic principles to ensure that we are meeting our overall objectives when it comes to the implementation of our Title VI plan. We make transportation decisions that strive to meet the needs of all people. We enhance public involvement in our processes to reach all segments of the population, ensure that all groups have a voice. We do this based on we do our transportation planning process regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, age, disability, and income status. That's broader than the basic civil rights act, but that is something that MetroPlan has included in our principle. We also provide the community with opportunities to learn about and improve the quality of transportation in their lives. We improve our data collection, monitoring, and analysis tools as we need, and we analyze the potential impacts of transportation plans and programs on the Title VI protected populations. We avoid disproportionately high or adverse effects to Title VI protected populations, and we comply with all of the requirements of Title VI accompanying rules and orders. Now, who does this work? Well, we have a Title VI coordinator, that's me, and my role is to ensure that all of the requirements of our Title VI program that we develop and is submitted and approved by ADOT, all of that is followed. That's what my role is. I'm responsible for administering the program, including the limited proficiency activities. I also ensure that our contracts contain the appropriate language and Title VI provisions. And I maintain the complaint log, and I also investigate complaints against any of our subcontractors or consultants or anything that might be raised during any of our projects. I have prepared the response to the complaints, and I review them with the executive director. Fortunately, we've never who helps me with the work. We also have with Mandia Gonzalez, and Mandia's role is to ensure that she's a central point of contact for any concerns or questions that come from the field related to our projects. Mandia also analyzes our planning activities to make sure that any of the Title VI groups that are identified in our region, we look at what might be a burden to them, what might be a disproportionate high adverse impact, and she also listens to any of their concerns. And Dia also does a lot of the analysis and the data analysis, because each year as part of our Title VI plan, we're always updating our data maps for the region to ensure that we know where all of those Title VI populations are located. So as part of the Title VI plan, we have a limited English proficiency plan. Someone who might be considered limited English proficient would be someone who does not speak English as their primary language or may have a limited ability to read or write or understand English. So in order to ensure that they have access to the information that we provide in our planning processes, we do two things. We have the four-factor analysis, and then we also have the safe harbor threshold. So let's talk about the four-factor analysis first. That includes demography. We look at the number of portion of limited English proficient people who are likely to be encountered by a specific program or a specific project. In our region, there's 137, almost 138,000 people and close to 57,000 households. And we review the American Community Survey to know exactly where people are located and what language they speak. We know all about those households, and it helps us to break down the information for the areas so we know if there are any Title VI populations related to a project. We also look at the frequency. We look at how often these limited English proficient individuals will come in contact with our project. Transportation touches the lives of everyone. And so we make an effort that we would provide information to any of the households that speak English less than very well. That's one of the categories. We also look at the importance. That's the third factor. How important is this service in people's lives? A lot of the projects that we're planning can affect people that live in a specific community. It can affect their access to transit. Access to transit can affect their access to schools. We've talked about that. And so that's something that we look at as well. And then the fourth factor is, what are the resources that are available? There is a cost to providing this extra level of support to these populations and communities. And so we have to look at what are MetroPlan's financial ability to provide all of this. And that's where this next factor comes in. Let's talk about the safe harbor threshold. So the safe harbor threshold is a stipulation that requires us to translate any vital documents if the limited English proficiency group that we've identified represents 5% or 1,000 households in this project. Many times we don't reach this threshold. So at this time, we are not currently translating any of our vital documents into other languages. However, we do note that that is still there. If someone were to reach out to MetroPlan and ask for more information, or let us know that they're not understanding the information that we're sharing because it's not they don't read or write or not understanding, but we will be able to assist them. This is how we assist them. So we have lists of different community organizations that are in touch with these populations. So we know they could be nonprofits, they could be religious organizations, they could be community church, other groups that know how to help us connect with these Title VI protected populations. We also take a look at evaluate our meeting times to make sure that they are at a time that will be accessible to people. We also make sure that the location that we have our meetings is accessible to people. We're in a location now where they're able to get here by transit. They can walk, they can drive. There's a lot of ways to reach us here in the downtown mentions that. Another way that we might reach out to these populations and provide information through we might do press releases, we might do advertisements, we might do postings at a central location to announce a meeting. That's another way that we can be to effect. Part of the annual Title VI plan is a preparation of the data that I mentioned. We need to know where these Title VI populations are located. We need to know where people who have limited English proficiency are located. And so we do an analysis every year to analyze the data that we collect. We develop a baseline demographic profile, and then we identify these key groups in the region. That's done by Mendia and our planning staff. And then it's analyzed as a group, and then the results are included in our updated plan. I mentioned before that we've been fortunate not to receive any complaints, but we do have a formal complaint procedure. On our website, we have a tab for the Title VI plan, and there are forms that the public or people in the community can fill out to report to us anytime they feel that they might have been discriminated against for any of the reasons that I mentioned. The forms are in both English and Spanish. Haven't received any yet, but if we ever receive complaints, there is a process that we follow. All of the complaints are sent to ADOT within 72 hours. We must notify them if we ever receive a complaint. And then depending on the project and how it's being funded, that will determine how the investigation is completed. If the program is FTA funded, MetroPlan would actually investigate that. And then we would come up with our determination, share that with ADOT, share that with the person who made the complaint. If the project is FHWA funded, FHWA will conduct that investigation. That is your brief update on Title VI and the MetroPlan Fast plan. Do you have any questions?
Is there any questions from the members of the TAC? Are there any comments or from the public?
I was wondering, this just relates to MetroPlan in general, as far as like how you guys meet or disseminate information before I go back up to the city. I just wanted to point out that for regional plan stuff, they had several of the transportation specific meetings at the city yard up Route 66, which is like almost impossible to get to without a car. Like there's no bus out there. There's very sketchy bike lanes. So I don't know if that's a commentary that you can pass to the city or not, or who plans those, but having something transportation related where a vast majority of people couldn't get there was pretty short-sighted in my eyes. So just a general comment. I don't know if this goes back up to how they plan, but that's just a consideration.
Thank you for your comment. I will include it in our minutes, and there are members from the city who are here, so they've also heard your comment. Thanks.
In section B, regional Arizona Department of Transportation, ADOT, planning to program P2P priority project discussion. Kate, you can take this one on.
Thank you, Chair and members of the TAC. This is another prioritization process that we do here at MetroPlan. This one is related to ADOT's 5-year capital plan. I'm calling that because it's essentially what it is, and it's more familiar to partners, even though ADOT doesn't call it that. At last year's advance, so last February, we went through a big prioritization process around this to identify the region's top priorities for ADOT to invest in within the region. We identified 7 projects. I'll show them in just a moment. And I'm suggesting a couple changes to that. This is something that we also update annually, but it is specific to projects on the state highway system. The way we move them forward is we talk to ADOT staff, leadership, and the State Transportation Board about including those in their capital program. I do want to acknowledge ADOT itself is underfunded as a whole. So getting one project at a time is a win, right? This is not a thing where we're going to have 12 projects awarded every year, and that should be our expectation. In fact, sometimes it may take us several years to get something included because of the state of funding. So with that, the 7 projects there are what we identified at last year's advances priorities. And our team has gone through and revisited them and are making some recommendations actually to simplify the list, because with the limited funding available, it's also hard to go down to the capital and say, we have 7 priorities. It's much, or to the State Transportation Board and say, we have 7 priorities. It's much easier to go and say, this is our top priority. It's not our only priority. We want to be clear, but it is our top priority. So US 180 was identified as the #1 project. And then the #2 was also clearly identified. And after that, it wasn't really so much a ranking order when we did it. We did put them in a ranking order, but I think at that point, people just said close enough. We have been speaking every month at the State Transportation Board about the need to fund US 180 improvements, and have talked to leadership about that. So they are aware. We don't know if that's included yet. So I'm suggesting that we continue to really advocate for that and not switch messages midstream about what our priority is. The #2, the Milton and Route 66 enhanced crossing. I'll explain more about it in a moment, but we're suggesting to change that to intersection improvements instead of enhanced crossings, and we'll show you more about why. The next 3 projects are things that we think there's other means to pursue. They're still important, but Route 66 and Ponderosa Parkway crosswalk improvements really are something that I think we can try to work with ADOT to include in their upcoming pavement preservation project. Grade separated crossings, while very much needed, I think some of these are grade separated. I think some of these are actually at grade crossings, are very much needed. This may not be the right funding mechanism for them, right? So as ADOT's looking at its priorities as a bridge over their road, something they're going to fund, is that a responsibility of the local jurisdiction? There's a lot of questions around that. And so just because of that, and because nobody has match to partner, et cetera, these are still important, but maybe not ripe to move forward. The Route 66 in Milton to Eldon improvements are similar to #3 in that I think we can work with some upcoming projects to try to get some of those done between the Downtown Mile project and the pavement preservation along Route 66. I am suggesting that we also keep the West 66 corridor improvements. Those are concepts have been started on the operational assessment, and we have been introducing bills at the legislature to keep this project moving. So I think that's an important piece. It's going to take partnership to get West 66 done. And then the last one is the US 89 traffic signal, and congrats again to the county on a grant application that it will fund that signal there. So suggesting that we don't need to keep this on our priority list at this point.
Real fast, Kate.
Yeah.
Also, just because these projects are not projects that MetroPlan keeps going and asking the board for as a priority, doesn't mean they fall off of ADOT's P2P list. So once you request a project to ADOT for P2P, that project actually stays on ADOT's P2P list until it gets ranked high enough to fund.
Thank you for that. So they won't be lost to ADOT. They're just not where we're going to put our time and effort. A little bit more about them. The US 180 corridor, we have been using this handout to explain to people what some of those improvements are, but these are really mostly improvements that come out of the corridor master plan, as well as the active transportation master plan. It's missing sidewalks, crossings. Some of this is in the works of being funded. Mountain Lines, First Last Mile grant in partnership with the city may get some of the crossings done. And then the city was awarded a transportation alternatives grant to do design of some of this and get more clear on exactly what all the improvements are. So it is moving forward, but we want to start finding that construction money so that way whatever comes out of this design effort can continue into construction. The second one is the Milton and West 66 intersection safety improvements. So this is one of our highest crash intersections in the city. It is a tough one to tackle. There are other plans here as well, such as the potential fourth leg, a study that Mountain Line did, the campus entry study on the campus. However, the things on this list are lower hanging fruit than doing a whole new intersection. So, but because of its high crash rates, trying to move something forward here for improvements would be ideal. And you can see how many plans have said you need to make improvements here on the reference plans. The West Route 66 corridor safety improvements, you can see some of those recommendations on the map. This is the out of the operational assessment that we just moved forward. So again, this would really be a bigger partnership with funding that the city has, the appropriations that we're trying to get to bring the full West 66 corridor plan together. So I'm suggesting that those three projects, if we have those three projects, we get much more clear to ADOT on what some of our priorities are than some of the ones that we dropped off. However, I do want to acknowledge there's lots of needs on the system. And so wanted to put a couple other things up here just for you all to consider to see if there is something that the timing is right for, right? That's a piece of this is the time now. You can see some of those safety improvements along Milton could be an opportunity. Belmont Interchange could be something that we put on this list. The Lone Tree Interchange or Woody Mountain Road, those are big projects that are all going to take partnership. And if ADOT could participate in them, that would help them go a long ways. The other piece is we can just leave the three projects suggested and wait for this project prioritization process that I talked about under the strategic grants plan that Kittleson is helping us with. And we can just wait and see what comes out of that in September and update this again next year. Because again, on some of these projects, we're really looking at a long game. So that it's not unless something's really ripe now that needs to move forward, we could just leave it as is. So with that, I'm open to any input from the TAC.
Suggestion to delete, like you say, not specifically delete truly, but at least the priorities that are going out in front of legislative bodies and interested parties that have the ability to move these projects. If we can stay focused as a region on a couple of key places, the Highway 180, and I think it was West Route 66. To me, that's the most, in terms of what's happening in our community with growth of development and the safety concerns, those are the two corridors. Including the fact that our city's transportation tax identified that as a partnership project years ago now. So again, like just continuing to move those items forward, I think is really critical. So it's a great idea.
The other comments from the TAC, questions from the TAC? No more comments from the TAC. Are there any comments from the public?
I had a question about when you said the Milton Route 66 intersection. When you said that's a high crash, is that car on car, car pedestrian, car cyclist? Is that just across the board?
Chair, would you like me to answer the question? It's all crashes are high there, but they're also high vulnerable user crashes. So it shows up as a hotspot for both on our.
Then where's there more information on that whole Highway 180? Is that out somewhere publicly?
Would you also like me to answer that one? Great. The ADOT has a website on the Milton Corridor Master Plan. So if you just Google Milton Corridor Master Plan, you will see that pop up.
Cool, thank you.
Sorry, did I say Milton? I meant US 180.
US 180. Master plan?
Yes.
Questions from the TAC public? Then move on to item number 3. Transportation Improvement Program TIP amendment approval process. Idea, Alan.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be up here for a while after this as well, so get used to my voice. All right, so today I wanted to discuss our TIP amendment approval process and seek guidance from the oops, I see, thank you. Oops, let me get back over here. Sorry, clicking on things I shouldn't be clicking on. All right. Wanted to seek guidance from the TAC on how best to move this forward. So before I jump in, I just want to put a reminder out there for any federally funded transportation project, inclusion in an approved transportation improvement program or TIP and the state's transportation improvement or STIP is required in order for the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration to participate in those project costs and issue those federal project authorizations. And I'm going to say this next sentence, but you'll It will all come together in just a minute. So federally, at a minimum, the Transportation Improvement Program amendments require board action to obtain federal authorization. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. So currently, per MetroPlan's policy within our public participation plan, the TAC is responsible for recommending any formal recommendations to the board. Then the board approves that amendment for inclusion into the TIP. As you see, due to our meeting schedule, we do have some gaps in between, and this could impact potentially delays in getting those formal amendments through so you can get through the approval and obligation process, and of course would have impacts on your timely receipt of any of those funds by our partners and agencies. So, for example, if we were unable to do today's formal amendment, that would have to wait 3 months for the next approval process. So although formal amendments are rarely requested, the scheduling conflicts for approval between the TAC and the executive board are still present. So we're trying to be a little proactive here. So with that, just a few reminders on what's required for a formal amendment. So you're aware, obviously, any major changes to the project, if we're adding new projects, deleting projects, changing funding sources, etc. I can tell you all those things later if you're interested. So for today's discussion, we wanted to kind of bring up these 3 different options, although we're, of course, open to any other ideas out there as well. Once again, we're just trying to be proactive in eliminating any of these timeline delays between the TAC and the board moving forward. So of course, number 1, we can continue with the policy as it currently is outlined in our public participation plan. The second is to amend the public participation plan by removing the TAC approval process and then just leaving that strictly on our board, which meets monthly with the exception of summer break. We have another option that's kind of a mashup of things. So if a project is already adopted in our regional transportation plan, our strategic grants plan, that P2P nomination document, and then we could have the TAC explicitly tell us that they approve any future TIP amendments for those existing projects. And then everything else would just go to the TAC outside of those listed projects. So I just wanted to open it up for some discussion, see if there were any, changes to this, other ideas out there, if there's a preference on moving this forward, any concerns, etc.
Comments or questions, discussion?
Do we know when the last formal amendment was done?
10 minutes ago. No, just kidding. Prior to that, I cannot recall off the top of my head, but I feel like it was not too long ago because I know I sent you paperwork.
The last one were illustrative projects. I want to say it's been a while.
Okay. See, I'll look to Ruth for that one.
Maybe September.
Maybe September. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Ruth. Yes.
Just a comment. I mean, I kind of like the idea of giving as much flexibility to the MetroPlan board and executive director, because from what I've seen, when at least the agency is awarded a grant, I mean, first of all, like you say, ideally it would have gone through, it would have been on the list as being a grant that was, everyone knew that, an agency was going for, and success, hey, they've got it. And then there's the process of obligation. And if it's a matter of it just showing up here, I mean, this is like an administrative step to, I mean, really the agency is just trying to get started on their project, secure the funding as a grant award under obligation. So to delay that, potentially have that create a cash flow issue for an agency, to me is not worth just sticking with an old process because we like to have the TAC do it. I don't see a lot of, I mean, an agency typically, if their leadership's like, we're going for this grant, we got it, we got the money, we're covering it, I would defer and say, just leave it to the board. I mean, it obviously has to be approved by MetroPlan as part of the federal process. So why create more bureaucratic steps in this whole process? So I would personally be fine with saying, yes, I mean, if different agencies get grants and they need to amend the tips and they can keep moving on their projects, let, you know, the executive board meets monthly, the director, the management committee meets, and they know they've got these awards, and they get it in, and they need to make the amendment. I think make it as simple as possible, rather than yet another group having to go through, but that's.
Especially a group that doesn't meet.
Exactly, that doesn't mean, it doesn't, most of us are not, I mean, we already are aware when a project comes through, it's been, our governing boards, respectively, our councils have already, that process has been approved at our agencies, so it's like we're just sort of the middle people kind of in the process, so I just feel like it makes a lot of sense to just defer to the executive directors. There's flexibility and nimbleness when agencies get changes in their projects or that's. Paul, what do you think?
No, I agree. Yeah, things pop up, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And you're always struggling to get it in the tip to get the grant.
Yeah. Anything to make that grant award obligation process simplified from the compliance with the state, and I don't know, to me that makes sense.
I agree with you. I think part of the two up there, I think would be the best way for us to move forward to remove some of that middle person approval and be able to get projects moving forward quicker than having to wait for the TAC to meet, especially if we get a grant awarded in April after the TAC meeting, we're not having another TAC meeting until November, and at that point in time, and we could complete our IGA project initiation package.
Yep.
A lot of ADOT TA project initiation packages, so you have that on the tip within 30 days of getting the project awarded, and if we're not meeting in those 30 days, we're going to second grant. So I really like the number two, not having to have the TAC approve it and just getting it approved.
Great, thank you all.
Yeah.
Actually, it's for the director. So number three, obviously kind of really the option is sort of that it's inferred in all of these documents, which keeps it, I guess, really open, but is that too murky from I don't know, the whole process? I'm curious what your.
I think MetroPlan's unique from other jurisdictions because, we have one city, one county, one DOT, one transit agency. Other MPOs are dealing with 40 cities and 7 counties. And so we're just a little bit unique. And so I think number two, frankly, is fine. I think the board meets regularly. If there's a 30-day timeline, even if we have a TAC meeting that month, we're not going to get it to the TAC and the board in 30 days, probably. And the other piece I think that we thought when bringing this forward is really that we're not seeing TAC discussion on these items. We are just seeing great, sounds good, move forward. This just kind of reflects that that's how it's been happening for years anyways.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for the feedback. Obviously, this wasn't an action item today, so I do offer our next steps here. So it sounds like we're going with option 2 to amend our public participation plan to remove the tax process and then solely rely on the executive board. So with that said, we'll go ahead and update that language and bring it for adoption to the executive board in April, unless there is a request to bring it to the TAC before then. Nope. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate that.
To the number transportation improvement program tip, all the projects. And you do this one as well?
Of course I am. All right, today is the formal call for projects from our local agencies. While we have received current capital improvement programs, this is just another opportunity for you all to add projects to the tip, or if you've had any updates to your CIPs. Of course, all of our agencies are eligible applicants, and we do have a list of the various project types that may be included in that call for projects. Here's just our calendar. So we'll obviously open up our call for projects to our local agencies today. And then there will also be a public component to this as well. So we do have a deadline for if you are providing any updated CIPs or you have those additional projects, please get them to us by February 20th. Starting February 24th, we will be doing a public posting to request additional projects from the public to be added in our list as well. And that one was a very brief one. So I'll see if there's any questions or comments related to that. No, you're good.
All right, any questions?
All right, we're all good on that one. All right, well, thank you. I will also be emailing you reminders, don't worry.
Documents around 66 operational assessment, lessons learned discussion.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. This was an item that was requested at our previous TAC meeting, so happy to bring it here today. So I wanted to take a moment to review the lessons learned on the West Route 66 operational assessment. As one of the elements of closing out our projects, the lessons learned really allows us to obviously reflect on the process, what worked well, what didn't work well, and how can we improve in the future. So this was a unique project for us. We were MetroPlan. We're working essentially as a consultant on this type of project for our partner. And then, of course, you know, the paired with our partner organizations and then facilitation of a project advisory group. These were new to us. So we were really excited to learn from it. We had
update everybody. So,
Dave, do you mind muting?
All
Thank
right.
you.
I do, so thank you, honey, for calling me.
All right. So anyways, this project was a new format for us. So excited to give it a try and see what we learned from it. So we did have two very candid conversations at the end of this process. One was with staff internally, and then the other one was with our project advisory group members. And that happened obviously at our last operational assessment meeting. And we really highly encourage folks to be candid and give us critical feedback. We also applied that to ourselves as well. So what did we ask ourselves and the project advisory group? We had really these 4 key questions: what worked well, what could be improved, wanted to take time to think about the ways we adapted through the process, and then what would we do differently in the future. So first up, what worked well? So we asked our project advisory group this question. A lot of folks really enjoyed the informal nature of these meetings. We wanted to keep them candid. It allowed us to build those relationships with our partners, and also just as individuals. It was really helpful in understanding, you know, what was of importance to each jurisdiction agency going forward. People did like group activities, and yes, I wish we had done more as well. And then the monthly project reporting that occurred throughout that process. Staff, like I said, this was an opportunity for us to learn and grow through the process and see how we can assist our partners moving forward. It really worked great when we did have those in-person meetings rather than the hybrid meetings. And of course, like I said, activities are always a good thing to encourage participation and discussion. We believe we did a solid assessment of the corridor. We wanted to obviously make sure all of our partners were involved, since this was a multi-jurisdictional project, and it helped us with our relationship building with our partners as well. Oh, I am just keep hitting that. I'm so sorry. So what could be improved? Our PAG members, they also said that they preferred in-person meetings. Many of them described that it was just a little hard to facilitate conversations or have people be engaged when you're in that hybrid situation. And of course, more time to prepare for meetings. Yes. MetroPlan staff, we certainly could have done better at our communications, particularly between the project advisory group and the TAC, bringing those together. I think the spacing between those meetings, you often, if you were just on the TAC, often saw it in one place and then a huge jump forward the next time you saw it. So it didn't really give you that opportunity to participate in it fully. We also played a lot of telephone on this project, just getting people up to speed that weren't necessarily involved in the project advisory group, but had a strong interest in participating. Certainly want to do better at setting expectations for project advisory groups in the future and what that role looks like. Of course, we had some requests for additional data analysis, and there's, things that come with that in terms of budget, scope, staff capacity as well. I think that a lot of the recommendations for the additional data analysis were completely valid. So I think thinking those through more closely in the scoping of a project would be beneficial. And then, of course, packing too much into a single meeting. Don't we all love doing that? All right, so ways that we adapted through this process. Obviously, yes, we were trying to give as much time in between meetings as possible for review. However, in the end, that really came out to just longer meetings, fewer but longer. Tried to set out that schedule as far as possible for more participation from our PAG members. We did start adding those, provide those monthly staff reports, or I'm sorry, staff reports as part of the agenda, very similar to your TAC packet. We thought that this might bring some more clarity and give our PAG members, what exactly that discussion item is or what the action is, and what we're looking for. So we could try to smooth the process at the in-person or hybrid meeting itself. I do feel like we put a lot of reminders out there that this is not a corridor master plan, that is an operational assessment. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. And then we also started to include the project or the monthly project reports. Once again, this is something that TAC members receive across all of our projects, but we also provided that to our PAG members to keep them in the know and engaged between those meetings. All right. So based on what we learned, what would we do differently? So I'm going to address the elephant in the room here. So really, we need to better define what steps need to be taken to ensure these planning projects or the recommendations are implementable. And that really requires us and our partners providing an understanding of what that policy looks like. The county, the city, MetroPlan, we all have our different processes towards adoption. So some of the questions that we needed to ask or ask more, ask up front and push it a little bit stronger was, does this document need to be adopted, in this case by city council? And what are those steps and what are the expectations for this? And as a note, we did originally have this project scoped as a corridor master plan, but through our interviews with different staff, including city staff, there was no desire to have a corridor master plan ratified into the regional plan. So having an implementable project at the end of the day is a lot harder, because then we transitioned away from that into this assessment, which was very data rich and provided information on the best ways that we could move forward in a project. So expectations just need to be better defined in the future. All right, so that's obviously a big one. What we learned, what would we do differently? Have those conversations really get to the heart of what you want out of these projects and how we can do it. Think of us in this capacity as a consultant. If you ask a consultant to provide an implementable plan, there's steps that they need to go through too. We tried to be as flexible as possible, but we recognize that some requests were valid and we didn't have that budget or capacity, thinking back to that, the data analysis request, we were optimistic. Certainly, we'll pay more attention to that project timelines, especially with the limited staff that MetroPlan does have. Obviously, want to take a deeper dive into the various scoped elements just to make sure that we're all on board moving forward and ensure that the communication is there not only from MetroPlan to our partners, but any partners that are assigning a staff person to participate on the project advisory group. Another important item that we would have liked to have done is to determine with the TAC of what consensus looks like in these process. You know, do we need consensus from everybody in the room? Does one agency have veto power over another? You know, how do we account? And then of course, how do we account for PAG members that are not participating or don't show up in those moments when a decision needs to be made? And then lastly, one thing I'd like to improve is actually tracking MetroPlan staff time to determine if there was an actual cost savings by conducting this assessment in-house versus a consultant. All right, so that's our lessons learned. And of course, I'm happy to take any questions or comments or additional feedback. I know many of you obviously are here on the TAC, but you were also on the project advisory group.
And I mean, I think it was a good point about this alignment about what an operational assessment post after that study, where it can be carried and what that process, that's interesting to hear. I do remember those discussions when it was actually de-scoped from the original desire to be a corridor master plan. But I guess still, but again, this is still a very technical process. And then we're still looking at what is the public going to expect? You know, they're not distinguishing between a corridor master plan and a operational assessment. I mean, they're looking to all of our respective agencies and our roles to do our best to improve our infrastructure. And so I'm hoping that still, as an individual on this committee, that there's still some leg work. It sounds like there is momentum somewhat with the OA at the city, and that's being tracked through the city's process with capital improvements and where the priorities may end up, and maybe those grants you mentioned earlier. So yeah, I mean, I still look at this OA as a huge step forward in what we had 2 years ago. It was literally a line on a tax ballot showing, let's do some improvements. So, I mean, kudos to MetroPlan for leading us through this process. And I mean, I think all of our agencies are better off to have the information, and information is good and it's got budget numbers to it. And now it's playing out through the process of grants and priorities at, at the city. So I really appreciate what you've done. Yeah, thanks.
From the city's standpoint, just to let you know what we're doing. So Senator Rogers did get the state appropriation for the traffic signal at Woody Mountain Road, West Route 66. That's going to our city council next week for approval. I think all in design and all the other work and construction, we're going to be at about maybe $750,000. It's going to be a steel pole span wire, but that'll leave us about say roughly $1 million left over that can be used for improvements on the corridor. Senator Rogers proposed another bill for $3 million in funding next year that just says design and construction of improvements on West Route 66. That got the do pass recommendation last week, right?
Yep.
The transportation
And appropriations.
Yeah. So we programmed that money in the CIP for next year, that if we do get it, we want to go out for design of the full corridor, and then we will use the operational assessment document kind of as the backbone for our design. Obviously, we'll have a lot of partners in there with, Mountain Line, MetroPlan, ADOT, county. We'll give you that signal at Woody Mountain.
That's really helpful to hear.
But yeah, we're hopefully get that money, then we'll get that, at least get that design done, and then maybe start going after grants or moving some of our funding that we have forward and start picking off projects along that corridor.
We'll just give you an impression from Paul. Don't even have to apply it, we'll just try to.
I don't know if we actually.
I think it's always been hard for agencies to accept documents done by MetroPlan and what was before, what was MetroPlan? before? FNPO as documents that are adopted by those agencies. I don't know exactly the reason, but it seems like most anytime that MetroPlan or FNPO did a planning document before, it always ended up just being a study and not an operational analysis that got adopted by any of the communities.
That's hard for that agency to enforce any improvements on a developer or anything like that. Right. It's good if we're gonna do the project, if the agency's gonna do a project, but if a developer comes in, it's hard to make them do whatever's in that document. Yeah, they're gonna do the minimum.
Yeah, so in future, I don't know if you guys have thought about this before, taking that staff time or that time and giving it to the agency to lead the study, so it's basically adopted by them. In the master plan, so it's adopted by them. For whoever's going to be responsible for implementing it, might make it easier to adopt by that agency.
Yeah, I think this is feedback we've heard before. It's definitely not new feedback. I think we're really curious from our perspective, we're happy for anyone to adopt any of our things. If you want to, we can't obviously force the county or the city or Mount Line to adopt something we do, but if you like the results, I think that's something for us, we're very open to, and yeah, curious as to why people don't. This specific 166, because it was scaled back from the corridor master plan to the OA, was never intended to be adopted early. But I think bigger picture, that's a discussion that's very open for us. We'd be happy to do those processes. And we are setting up the Safe Streets master plan in a way that the city will adopt it at the end. I'm going to adopt components of it. So just know that it's on the table for you if that's what you want. We just need to talk about what that process is.
And if I may, I think at the start of the OA, we really tried to emphasize, like, we're essentially doing the work that you would hire a consultant to do. So I don't know if that's a better way to frame it in the future when we are doing these projects specific to whether it's a location or specifically for an agency, but certainly, as Kate said, something that we can continue to talk about.
Sean, you have a comment?
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation about, kind of adopting the plans. I think just global feedback on all these plans is we need to, I think at the beginning, establish how we want the plan to be used. And I say that because, when you talk about building it into the project, I'm a big advocate of that because when these plans aren't adopted, we can't enforce it on private development. And in order to even have it be legally a legal document that we can refer to and legally actually defer to it, it has to be adopted in a very specific way through our specific area plan. And so happy to go through that with MetroPlan staff of what that process is so that you can start building it into projects. And I think that, we probably want to talk as a TAC how we want each document to be used and that not all of them need to be adopted, but just really want to echo what other people were saying because I think that was some of the feedback I've heard on this project and others is how are we going to use it and where is it really going to have teeth? So thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from India? Attack? About the public, any comments from the public? Thank you, India.
Of course.
Next, we'll move on to item number 7, Arizona Department of Transportation Traffic Count Program. Dave, you giving us an update on this one?
Yeah, just by way of introductions, we do have staff from ADOT who are going to give us a I'm looking at the screen, it says Safe Streets Master Plan Update. Did I hear ADOT traffic counts?
KDOT traffic counts is next.
Okay.
State Streets needs some reason. Jump ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Very quickly, a couple updates on the master plan project management team. Chris Fair, who is named the co-project manager with me, is leaving the city on the 13th of February, and the city is talking about his replacement on that project management team. City has added Tiffany Antall to the project management team, so we have a nice balance between, you know, the planning and engineering side. We have a recommendation for our project oversight committee. Joanne Keene, Michelle McNulty, Paul Mood, Scott Overton, Kate Morley, and Jackie Lenners. The oversight committee would meet probably quarterly, just to get updates, make sure that we're moving in the right direction, checking on, you know, policy alignment, and then also handling escalation issues that would go up through the transportation working group. We'll talk about that here in a moment, but really at that first level of, or maybe the highest level of escalation. And if they saw the need to, they would elevate it to city council or the MetroPlan board. As far as project management is concerned, initial data and plan gathering is near complete. We're working as a project management team to identify participants in the technical working group, the Complete Streets Task Force, Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and Citizens Advisory Group. In spite of having all of these groups, we probably have more people than needed participants. And we'll be working with the consultants to make sure that we have a communication plan that gives everybody access. Next slide, please. So here's the kind of overview, the TWIG, as we're calling it, the technical working group, is really a higher level effort looking at process and methods. They're going to be perhaps they are going to be the most intensely involved. Then later in the process, there will be this Complete Streets Task Force, really looking at design, costs, and operations. And then for a broader outreach, we'll have a Stakeholder Advisory Committee and a Citizens Advisory Group. The stakeholders are really representative, and the citizens group is really personal. So, you know, if we have somebody from Friends of Flagstaff's Future, they really should be speaking on behalf of all 600 members at the stakeholder meeting, for instance. If somebody sits on the Citizens Advisory Group, really want to hear what they think of a policy or a design and how it's going to affect them personally. So you see this kind of flow chart on the right. At the very top, you've got the MetroPlan Board and Council, who will adopt the plan. And then below that, the groups overseeing the plan. So the MetroPlan TAC, you all, the Zoning Commission and Transportation Commission will be receiving regular updates. And again, at the end of the day, we'll hopefully make recommendations to the governing bodies. Below them, we have the project management team that will be providing that communications. Again, that's myself, Mandia, to date, Chris Fair and Tiffany Antall, along with the Kittleson team, and feeding information and coordination with us will be that Complete Streets Task Force and the technical working group. And then you can see the groups below. We would add, I think, on the left-hand side, informs the plan city staff, MetroPlan staff will be taking the lead to communicate with the various commissions at the city and occasionally the county to gather their input. So it's not just limited to the pedestrian advisory and bicycle advisory committees. Next slide, please. So this is who we're recommending serve on the technical working group. From the city, Jeff Bauman; from transportation, Sarah Dechter; from planning, Sam Beckett; from public works, Chris Jack from the fire department, and Jenny Neiman from sustainability. Jeremy DeGator is the district engineer. And then we're thinking somebody from the roadway design group would be good to sit on this. From the county, Nate Reiser and Jess McNeely, and then Busy Collins. And we suspect when they hire a planning director, the planning director would step in, take position on this group from Mountain Line. We'll come back to that slide in a moment. Next slide, please. So what's ahead? We're really looking to get the TWIG meeting and charter process underway in the next 30 days. We're using the city's approach memo approach that they used for the last cap study to really kind of check back in on the scope and the methods, refine it a little bit further, make sure we're comfortable, and then we'll authorize them to initiate. And under these larger tasks, there's generally multiple subtasks, and we're going to be authorizing down at that level to just to make sure that we're really gatekeeping well on this. We'll see the final project management plan, and then the start of their review of plans and studies and what they call an inconsistencies audit. So very similar to, I think, some of the work that the last cap is doing, but with a particular focus on transportation. Next slide. 90-day look ahead. Really start getting into that first phase of public involvement or engagement, making sure that the data, we've just kind of done a big data dump right now, and I think we've done a pretty thorough job of that. But now they'll start really inventorying that, seeing where some gaps exist, and developing a database. And then really start working within that transportation master plan task 4, community profile and evaluation of the system. So I think that may be the last slide. And ready for questions or comments, but and we may want to go back to that TWIG assignment and see if that seems reasonable, because that's really what we want to issue invitations and get schedules started. So happy to answer any questions. We're really excited about the project, and it's off to a good start.
Any questions or comments from the TAC?
I think the technical working group looks good.
Great, thank you for that comment.
Anybody else? Not seeing anybody. Are there any comments from the public? Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, we'll be, and given the schedule, we'll be issuing, monthly reports to the TAC so they can keep track of this. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Right now, we'll go to item number 7, the ADOT traffic count program.
Yeah, and thank you to the ADOT staff who've been waiting patiently online. They are here today to just give us a quick update, and I will conclude with a very brief update of our own count program and efforts. So I think I'll introduce Sonia, and she can introduce her team and let you go from there.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having us to do and allowing us to come in and provide an update. I'll take an opportunity to recognize that beginning of a new year is really an excellent opportunity to reflect on what we can accomplish together by partnering and working cooperatively. So I appreciate your collaboration and commitment to partnering in the past few years since I've filled in the role of a local public government liaison. And I stand ready to assist you as you navigate throughout the 2026 in your tasks with your traffic monitoring program. Next slide, please, if you will. You may have seen this visual before, and if you've seen it, it could have been referred to as the HPMS annual cycle. What I want to do here is refer to it and describe it from traffic monitoring perspective. And before I go into the cycle, I want to mention that all traffic count data is collected annually. Annually as in calendar year, which in traffic monitoring world equals to collection year. So as we, ADOT, and local public agencies, member agencies alike, collect traffic data from January through December of each calendar year, that data is annualized and it is being reported as part of the HPMS report to FHWA on two occasions. I believe the first submittal is April 15th and the second submittal is due June 15th. So this June, we're reporting data from 2025. But let's go to the visual. Phase one, what I like to call phase one of traffic monitoring cycle is actually what's highlighted on your visual as phase four of HPMS process. So we kick off the collection in March. And all the way through December, traffic monitoring section staff and all of you locally collect traffic. So in stage 4 of HPMS process, what does data analytics section do? They're busy with April 15th interstate HPMS submittal. So first submittal for Lucas's and his team is on April 15th, interstates data. But they also finalize the pavement data. And we, in traffic monitoring, again, we start our annual short-term traffic count cycle. Phase 2, 3, and 4, which happen to be phases 5, 1, and 2 of HPMS. And they're consecutively June to July, August through September, and October through November. Traffic monitoring does nothing more but continue to count and also installing, calibrating, and maintaining ATRs and BIMs. I want to mention that phase 3 of traffic monitoring, which is phase 1 of HPMS, Lucas's team, data analytics section, they reset HPMS process. Along with that reset is August 15th final acceptance of previous year's HPMS submission. So on August 15th of this year, FHWA will issue the final acceptance of previous years, which is 2025 HPMS submission. And phase 5 of traffic monitoring cycle, which is actually HPMS phase 3, December through February, is I like this phase the best. Short-term traffic count, seasonal break. But we're taking a break from collection, but we're not taking a break from what? LPA traffic data processing. So when you get this email from me in November, December, and again in January, please submit your data. All of that data, our HPMS group, Lucas and his team, they are quality controlling that data, they are cleaning it up, and eventually that data ends up in a submittal. And then phase 1 starts all over again, March through May. We're starting the short-term counts again. Next slide, please. On the next
Sonia,
slide, yes.
Sonia, before you continue, I just wanted to bring to your attention, this has been a very full agenda. We do end our meeting at 3:30.
I apologize.
And we have a
I
few closing
apologize for that.
businesses.
Yes, thank you.
All right,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I do want to bring up something that contract group asked me to bring up, which is, I'm not going to read through this list. So let's spend some time on a co-op agreement 2024. At the beginning of the meeting, I've cut and paste 4 vendors that have been selected through a co-op agreement in 2024. All Traffic Data, Field Data Services, Traffic Group, and United Civil Group. These contracts were established in 2024 for use by all state agencies and eligible co-op members. And these contracts have been designed to leverage the purchasing power by the entire state to secure the best value. And I'm on one of the next slides, you will see the link to the SPO, State Procurement Office, where each one of you, on one of the further slides, but each one of you can go to, or interested parties can go to that website, which is SPO's website, and look up the State Procurement Officer responsible for that contract, and you can ask any questions about those contracts, okay? So local partners roles, I'm just going to spend time on 1 and 2, the most important ones. Please collect the data on locally owned roads and please voluntarily share that data whenever feasible to MS2. Why to MS2 on a next slide, please. MS2 is simply the best way and a centralized repository where all the local agencies submit their local data and they pay $0. They pay, there is no software purchase or installation as we, ADOT, pays for annual subscription to pass that software down to you as our local partners, and you can get instantaneous count results on your traffic data. I always say traffic counts should be collected once and used multiple times, and MS2 TCDS application allows you exactly it. Next slide, please. Primary uses of data, I already mentioned reporting, traffic studies, pavement design input. Next slide, please. If you're reclassifying the road, your justification probably is asking you to submit your count data along with that, air quality initiatives and travel estimates. If, next slide, please. You probably have been asked by either Chamber of Commerce's or realtors and developers, appraisals, to submit the data to them for research reasons, and from academia, you've probably been asked to submit data for them as well. Next slide gives you a current status of your traffic counts. You're at 85% current, 1% missing, and 15% overdue. Great outlook. You're just going to need to maintain this going forward. And on the next slide, I have that SPO website. in a lower left corner where you can go to look if you're an eligible member that you can utilize that co-op agreement and look for procurement officer connected or responsible for that contract. You've got a gap map link and dashboard and your MS2 portal link. And I'm going to transition this over to Lucas and GIS team to provide a quick update, and we can get some questions from you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. And David, I want to be very mindful of this group's time. Our slides are probably going to take us a little too close to the end of this meeting. And so if I can work with you, with Tammy, with the chair to maybe reschedule us for a future meeting and we can cover our materials then, if that's okay with you.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, for the person controlling the slides, if you go to the very last slide in this deck, we'll cover these materials at a future meeting, but the very last slide does have our contact information where you can feel free to contact myself and Nicholas Dennis, who is also here. We are able to help out with any HPMS functional classification questions. And if you have any traffic monitoring questions, please reach out to Sonia Kadik-Jahar, and she'll be able to help you with those. And once again, I'll work on getting us on a future agenda so we can talk more about HPMS and functional classification. So thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. Apologize for having your presentation cut a bit short, and thank you for being conscientious of our time. I do want to give a little shout out to Works Consulting. We had a little training with them on the MS2 site, and would encourage all of our TAC members to become familiar with it, because there's a lot of good information, good access to all the good work that ADOT's doing. So there is a one slide I'm going to go over very quickly what we've been doing. We have about 170 ped and bike counts done. We'll typically do about 30, but we had some extra funding. Our Montoya fellow Melanie Nagel is producing some really nice thematic maps around those things. We have a considerable number of hose counts, radar counts, and I'll be going through that quality control in MS2 to clean those up, and they'll be available on MS2, and we'll put them available in a manifest format, an Excel spreadsheet. In a future meeting, and maybe we can coordinate with Lucas on this presentation, really trying to decide whether it's going to be more cost effective and actually more useful to do what we're trying right now, which is to do a set of counts every year and then cycle through the entire region. And for the counts not being updated, to update those with a growth factoring method, which is currently under development. It looks like it works pretty well, but being able just to maintain it may be more effective just to do a big mass set of counts. So we'll do that conversation later. I believe that's it for the count program, and we do have some time. I'll leave that up to Tammy running the agenda if we have time for questions.
Well, move to item number 8, how happenings at MetroPlan.
Thanks, Chair, members of the board. Happenings is our last formal agenda item, so we're very close. This is just a rundown of things that have happened over the last several months since the TAC has not met. I want to acknowledge our board members who have been going to the State Transportation Board every month, not necessarily in person, but showing up for those and making comments on the US 180 project to advance that in the P2P process. This week, Mayor Daggett traveled to Phoenix to speak in favor of the $3 million appropriation from Senator Rogers. It's passed through 2 more committees since then, so it's actually moving really quickly, which is a good sign. It ultimately needs to be included in the budget at the end, which is the big hurdle, but the bill itself is moving and very exciting. Member or Chair Sweet and Member Vasquez and I are going to the Capitol tomorrow to also meet with members of the legislature to talk about this bill. We want to just acknowledge that MetroPlan, this team is awesome and they help celebrate Martin Ince's retirement, the multimodal planner at the city. That position was originally a joint position between the city and MetroPlan, so he has a long history with us as well. The team woke up at 6 o'clock on a rainy morning to go do Martin's last bike ride with him. He had never taken his car to work, and he is a driver. He had never driven his car to work in 28 years, which is really impressive. And he doesn't live nearby either. And then we did kick off that project prioritization process that we were able to touch on earlier. I'm not going to read through all these. I'm just going to let you all peruse them. There has been a lot of movements on grants lately, which is really exciting. A lot of awards coming in, a lot of applications being made. We had seen a real slowdown as the federal administration had transitioned, but that's ramping back up and that's really good news. Some of these grants are also through ADOT, so I want to acknowledge ADOT for all the work they're doing to get money to the region as well. And that's all I have for happenings. Happy to take questions.
This is from the Tactical Advisory Committee. The items that the TAC wants to share. I'd like to share a couple of things real fast. On the county's safety action plan, we have our survey up right now on the county website, for the Public Works website. If you transverse any of the county roads, and you see an issue with something, have a map on there where you can write input on the issues that you see. Then also I wanted to give an update on Lake Mary Road where we did the 2-foot shoulder buffer for striping. This is the first full year that we've had crash data from that striping change. The 6 years prior, we saw a crash rate from a million vehicle miles traveled to 74, and just over the 1 year period, we saw a reduction in the crash rate of 100 million vehicles traveled to 22.8. So that was over 55 crash rate of 55 reduction, 55% reduction. So it's only 1 year looking at, so we'll keep looking at it, but that's pretty significant for late departures. That's all I have. Oh wait, the other thing I have is the county just got a TA grant for multimodal connectivity network plan for all of our Coconino County. So if anybody's interested in being on a TAC or key stakeholder list on that, let me know and we'll get you on it once we get our project, submit our project initiation package. But once we get our IGA project going with ADOT, then we'll be putting together those key stakeholder lists. That's all I have.
Just an update on the first mile, last mile was presented to Mountain Line's board last week. Part of the project with the city, managed by a city project manager. We submitted our final plans to ADOT. They're in review for the 3 crossings on Highway 180. So hopefully a step towards improving, a big improvement on Highway 180 corridor. We're aiming to hope to get permits by April 1st, and our contractor will be getting our GMP. And so we are lined out to have our resources to help do construction this summer. And there were also 5 pedestrian crossings on Solier, which is along Mountain Line's Route 3, which carries a lot of residents, students moving out that way. So that's a separate part of the first mile, last mile, great partnership with the city. So.
Any other updates? To adjourn, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting at 3:28?
So moved.
Second? And done with seconds, all in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, thanks, everybody.
So Jeff, response, Carol.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He emailed this morning.
What was her name?
Yeah, it was not.